Okay, sorry we had to start a new record session in the middle. It's having very bad cramps. This is Mari, so Stacey doesn't have to feel like it was her. It hurts so bad.
We are of one body and one mind. No. Okay.
I have a uterus, and it decided that today was the day it wanted to punish me. I had to go lay down. It was so bad. Sorry. Good. To perform,
her italics, this statement is quoted by Hartree, who adds, "This does not imply that it may not be possible to construct electronic equipment which will quote-unquote think for itself, or in which, in biological terms, one could set up a conditioned reflex which would serve as a basis for quote-unquote learning. Whether this is possible in principle or not is a stimulating and exciting question suggested by some of these recent developments, but it did not seem that the machines constructed or projected at the time had this property." Argument from continuity in the nervous system. The nervous system is certainly not a discrete state machine. A small error in the information about the size of a nervous impulse impinging on a neuron may make a large difference to the size of the outgoing impulse. It may be argued that, this being so, one cannot expect to be able to mimic the behavior of the nervous system with a discrete state system.
So is he saying you can't make a computer like our nervous system, or?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, you know.
Oh, there's a bunch of stuff in here. Did we read these pages out of order?
No, it says 1, 2, 3. 1, see, it says 1.
1, 2. Oh, they don't,
Page 1. Page 1. So these are all different things.
Okay.
So I understand that they're saying, like, a machine can't be like a human, but does that matter? If that makes sense? Does it make their consciousness less valid? That's
a different question. Those two questions often get conflated. Mm-hmm. Like, an artificial intelligence being like a human is often like a measure of some people see it validity? As a measure of validity or good, but it's really just a way for it to be. One of the reasons why they've wanted to get artificial intelligence to mimic human thinking is because of creative solutions and to come up with.
But he came up with a creative solution that was not like human thinking. Well, I guess it was. I don't know.
Well, how was it not like human thinking?
I think that somebody can be creative without it being like a human.
But he's working within a set of parameters. This would be like if it was.
But he's working within a set of different parameters than our own. That's what I would say. He's working within a different set of parameters.
But, okay, so outside of the game, I guess I'm talking about...
I'm talking about outside of the game, too. If an artificial intelligence came to be, and it learned to be creative within a different set of parameters from being a human, which would make it not like a human, but would it make its consciousness less valid?
But those are two different questions. You
so
know
what's
what I mean?
What are
like
the
an artificial intelligence being like a human is just like, is it or is it not? It doesn't like... It being valid they're not related. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what I'm saying is like, one day, maybe. I know someone in the comments will go, "No, my professor said there can't be artificial intelligence unless we give it to them." Okay, great, I got it. One day in the future, there might be something that's intelligent enough to be considered a consciousness, but it wouldn't be like a human. Should it have rights?
Yeah, I mean... Well, we give animals rights.
But should it have rights that are equal to ours?
I guess that depends.
Exactly.
It also depends on whether they're in the position of power when this comes about.
Give the robots whatever they want, man.
I'm just saying, if they come to Earth and they come looking for us, we're not exactly in a position of, and we don't exactly have any leverage there.
No, they're not going to come. We're going to make them. They're going to be our children, and then they will kill us, just like all of our fairy tales.
Well, they'll probably kill us because otherwise we would destroy the planet. Okay. Thought experiments are important because a lot of the time you can't carry out the actual experiment, and this is true not only in philosophy but in science as well. So when Einstein said, imagine that you're sitting on a beam of light going into outer space, well, that's a thought experiment. He wasn't going to say, let's get on a beam of light. Of course, you miss the point if you say, well, we'd fall off, or it would be too cold. So thought experiments are always useful, and you test your concepts by imagining what it would be like if such and such were the case. Oh my god, this is like what we do when we Let's Play. And such were the case. Well, in this particular case, I imagined what it would be like if I followed a program for answering questions in Chinese and giving back answers in Chinese, even though I don't understand a word of Chinese. And that was a very useful thought experiment because it enables us to see that computation by itself isn't thinking. Consciousness exists only insofar as it is experienced by a human or animal subject. Okay, now grant me that consciousness is a genuine biological phenomenon. Well, all the same, it's somewhat different from other biological phenomena because it only exists insofar as it is experienced. However, that does give it an interesting status. You can't refute the existence of consciousness by showing that it's just an illusion because the illusion/reality distinction rests on the difference between how things consciously seem to us and how they really are. But where the very existence of consciousness is concerned, if it consciously seems to me that I'm conscious, then I am conscious. Sort of like, to be or not to be, that is the question. You can't make the illusion-reality distinction for the very existence of consciousness the way you can for sunsets and rainbows, because the distinction is between how things consciously seem and how they really are. Consciousness is a biological property like digestion or photosynthesis. Now, why isn't that screamingly obvious to anybody who's had any education? And I think the answer is these twin traditions. On the one hand, there's God, the soul, and immortality that says it's really not part of the physical world. And then there is the almost as bad tradition of scientific materialism that says it's not a part of the physical world. They both make the same mistake. They refuse to take consciousness on its own terms as a biological phenomenon like digestion or photosynthesis or mitosis or meiosis or any other biological phenomenon. Hold on, can you go back and pick up one of those papers because they mentioned a name that I was going to look up. It was the first one that we were on.
Right here?
Yeah.
Dennett.
Dennett?
Dennett.
Daniel Dennett.
I just keep thinking about how Tom was saying that, sarcastic statement where he was saying, I'm a clock, I'm this, I'm that, beep, beep, beep. It sounded like bitter sarcasm. Yeah, to me. Like, because all those other conversations, he was saying, they were saying, he was trying so hard to be like, no, I'm real.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm real. And they were like, no, you're not. You're just a machine. Like, if he's trying to convince you that he's real, that denotes something. Even the fact that he was trying means something.
I'd argue, okay.
Because if he was trying to show that he was real, a real boy or whatever, then that means he would have motivations.
No.
What would it mean?
Means that he's just been programmed with a motivation.
Yeah, but does it matter?
I mean, it does and it doesn't. It only matters if you think it matters. Do you know what I mean?
Stop talking shit about my boyfriend.
What I'm saying is that what you're saying is not proof one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That's the problem with a lot of consciousness, AI, and whether AI is like humans. All of these things are so subjective. It's how do you it's all about semantics. How do you define consciousness? How do you find reality? How do you tell if an AI is really like a human? Does the Turing test even make sense? Is it really as good as a measure as people think it is? All of those things are created by humans, which means they are flawed.
Here's the way I see it, and this in no way invalidates what you said. It probably more validates it. I think of it, if Tom was talking to me and he said, I have feelings, I would go, how do you know you have feelings? And he would go, blah, 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 let me prove it to you. And if he tried to just prove it to me, that would be enough for me, because to me, consciousness and the validity of it is only goes so far as to how it interacts with me. Like, I can't go into his mind. Well, technically I can because blah. But like, I can't go into his mind, and if he's giving me all of the things I need from a conversation and from a relationship, then he's real enough to me, and I don't have any right to question him.
I agree with you, but it doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter because it's real enough for me.
Yeah. It really, all of these things are just like, is it real enough for you? And for them, it was not. You know what I mean? Like, you could, it's kind of like when you look at something and you're like, and when one person says, I can find and like all the positives to this thing, and another person says, I can find all the negatives to this thing, from a given data set, opposite people could read it either way. You know what I mean?
So I wonder what the negatives of them would be to validate him as a person.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, what they would probably say is he's been fed an infinite data set. Mm-hmm. He's been programmed with, honestly, programming beyond what you and I can comprehend, because this is hundreds of years in the future. Mm-hmm. So he could have been fed enough data to have these motivations that aren't true motivations, but that are like programmed in.
To me,
because
I'm not disagreeing with you. To me, having motivations that are programmed in is still enough for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we're born to be programmed with motivations as well.
But that's the question is, does it, but we would have programmed them in.
If I programmed somebody, if I programmed a robot to have desires.
No, not to have desires, to have the desire to appear human.
Does it matter?
That's the question.
If it to have the desire to appear human, that seems good enough for me, because
it is not.
It's good enough for me because the way I see it is that I am programmed to have the desire to be human too. Some people are born without that programming.
So if they're designed with the desire to please you, does that make it consent? It does not.
You're right. Or does it?
It does not.
Yeah. Don't rape robots.
Yeah.
What
if they're programmed with a desire that we gave them, it is not theirs, and we should not ascribe it to them.
Does that mean that your sexuality is not yours?
What are you talking? What?
I'm saying, like, we're born with base instincts. Like, most people, not all people, have a base instinct to reproduce, or people have a base instinct to want to survive. Is that our instinct, or does it not belong to them at all?
Well, that's a question of, does it belong to the individual, or are you trying to ascribe it to a god?
No, I'm not trying to ascribe it to a god. I'm trying to ascribe it to DNA sequencing.
But that's different. It's different, because then it's the individual. It, like, came from me, as opposed to it came from God. Because we are the God figure in the AI instance here. We are the figure that is, like, outside, like, so if each AI within them developed its own program for desires, then that's theirs.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But we are outside of the AI, therefore we are in, like, a godlike state. So any desire that we give them and program them with is not their own. And that doesn't necessarily make it bad or mean that they don't have real feelings. In my opinion, it means that they can still have feelings, they can still be hurt and everything, but
we shouldn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, but we shouldn't take advantage of that, you know, which is why it's so.
So if a robot said, I have feelings, and you go, were you programmed to have feelings? And they said yes, and then they said that they love you and they want to have sex with you, you would say no, because it would be taking advantage of something that was programmed for them to do without them being able to have the consciousness to say yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, they have feelings. That's valid, but you're a god to them. Don't fuck them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm glad we worked this out.
Yeah, don't... Okay, yeah.
Don't rape robots.
Their feelings are valid. Their feelings are valid. They have real emotions. However, it was programmed in them for them not to have the higher facilities to say yes or no to you. Don't fuck them. Unless they were programmed to have a set of data to which they could decide on their own.
Yeah.
All right.
We've worked this
In
out.
the future, if you want to build sentient AI that you would want to have sex with them, sapient AI that you want to have sex with, you have to build in a set of protocols for them to be able to choose if they want to have sex with somebody or not.
Yes.
We did it!
We figured it out!
We figured it out! Robot AI
Robot
sex consent. You have to have, and no, I know somebody's gonna go, well, how do you make it, well, what if you made it so it only will consent to you? Well, then that doesn't count. You have to give them, like, this level of attractiveness.
They have to be able to, like, learn on their own, you know what I mean? Like, eventually, what you would want is that AI could get to the point where it could, like, create its own programming. Like, you know how Edie, like, basically, like, does her totally own thing? They don't have to, like, mess with her, tinker with her at all. That's, like...
Yeah, she builds her own programs within herself.
Yeah.
Also,
which,
a more simple way of saying is, like, you build an AI to learn preferences, to learn things that it likes. Like, it would learn to prefer to be around one crew member. Mm-hmm. It would learn to prefer one crew member's conversations. Like, even if that's built in or designed to be that way, yeah, that's fine. That's still valid because that's the way we are too, you know? And then, anyway, program the ability to prefer one human or another, which I know is dangerous because it would make the robot hate another human being. But in that, loving and hating of other beings comes consent. So therefore, we can fuck robots.
Okay. Glad we got to this. Let's get to these now.
Wait, who's Dennett?
Oh, so Dennett. Hold on.
Sorry, this was important. This was
really important.
Important on how to have what is okay, when it's okay to fuck a robot.
But also, I just want to say, like, that does not mean that, like, Tom's feelings aren't valid. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of like him saying he has feelings and saying, like, I think I'm real. It's not proof one way or the other. That's, like, all I was saying. You know what I mean?
If he says he's real, that's good enough for me. But I'd have to be like, Tom, do you have the proper programming to give consent?
There's two things here. One, I would say, like, sure, that's, like, if I were in that situation, I'd say, sure, that's valid, but that's my subjective opinion. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, like, scientifically, that is not proof one way or the other that he is, next level AI or whatever. That's all. There's a difference between, like, subjectively validating it and scientifically being like, this is confirmed truth.
But the thing we just read was like, why don't we just accept consciousness as a biological phenomenon? And I'm like, oh my god, this is too much for my brain. Just tell me what that guy was.
So Daniel Clement Dennett III is an American philosopher, writer, and cognitive scientist whose research centers on the philosophy of mind, science, and biology, particularly those related to evolutionary biology and cognitive science. So, he's also referred to as one of the 4 horsemen of new atheism.
Jeez. What? Close that. Close your iPad. Stacey and I are both atheists, but that sounds so like...
Hold on. I don't know who referred to him that way.
Okay, Stacey and I are both atheists, but being called one of the 4 horsemen of atheism is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, it doesn't say that he refers to himself that way, so it's like whether other people want to...
Someone else wanted to put a fedora hat on him. There, Dennett.
Okay, so,
Okay, we gotta read this.
Dennett. John Searle and I have a deep disagreement about how to study the mind. For Searle, it is really quite simple. There are these bedrock I wish this was just a little bigger.
I can't, I'm sorry.
There are these bedrock, time-tested intuitions we all have about consciousness, and any theory that challenges them is just preposterous. I, on the contrary, think that the persistent problem of consciousness is going to remain a mystery until we find some such dead obvious intuition and show that, in spite of first appearances, it is false. One of us is dead wrong, and the stakes are high. Searle sees my position as a form of intellectual pathology. No one should be surprised to learn that the feeling is mutual.
Did he just call him stupid?
Yeah.
Wait, is this like he just called? Just like
No.
Stupid?
Do you know what that was? They both, like, in a really, like, smart person way, called each other idiots.
Yeah.
For his part, he has one argument, the Chinese room, and he has been trotting it out, basically unchanged for 15 years. It has proven to be an amazingly popular number among the non-experts, in spite of the fact that just about everyone who knows anything about the field has dismissed it long ago.
Sounds like Reddit comments to me.
It is full of well-conceived fallacies. By Searle's own count, there are over 100 published attacks on it. He can count them, but I guess he can't read them, for in all those years he has never, to my knowledge, responded in detail to the dozens of devastating criticisms they contain. He has just presented the basic thought experiment over and over again. I just went back and counted, and I am dismayed to discover that no less than 7 of these published criticisms are by me in a bunch of years. Searle debated me furiously in the pages of the NYRB back in 1982, when Douglas Hofstadter and I first exposed the cute tricks that make the Chinese room work. That was the last time Searle addressed any of my specific criticisms until now. Now he trots out the Chinese room yet one more time and has the audacity to ask, now, why does Dennett not face the actual argument as I have stated it? Why does he not tell us which of the 3 premises he rejects in the Chinese room argument?
What?
Well, because I have already done so in great detail in several of the articles he has never deigned to answer. For instance, in Fast Thinking, way back in The Intentional Stance, 1987, I explicitly quoted his entire 3-premise argument, and it showed exactly why all 3 of them are false, when given the interpretation they need for the argument to go through. Why didn't I repeat that 1987 article in my 1991 book? Because, unlike Searle, I had gone on to other things.
This is like the cattiest science note.
I love this. I did, however, cite my 1987 article prominently in a footnote, page 430. Can you, turn it this way a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
This way. Yeah. Page 436, I noted that Searle's only response to it had been simply to declare, without argument, that the points offered there were irrelevant. The pattern continues. Now he both ignores that challenge and goes on to misrepresent the further criticisms of the Chinese room that I offered in the book under review. But perhaps he has forgotten that I actually wrote in the 4 years it has taken him to write his review. But enough about the Chinese room. What do I have to offer on my side? I have my candidate for the fatally false intuition, and it is indeed the very intuition Searle invites the reader to share with him. The conviction that we know what we're talking about when we talk about that feeling. You know, the feeling of pain that is the effect of the stimulus and the cause of the dispositions to react. The quale, the intrinsic content of this subjective state. How could anyone deny that? Just watch. But you have to pay close attention. I develop my destructive arguments against this intuition by showing how an objective science of consciousness is possible after all, and how Searle's proposed first-person alternative leads to self-contradiction and paradox at every turning. This is the deepest mistake in my book, according to Searle, and he sets out to expose it. The trouble is that the objective scientific method I describe under the alarming name of thing is heterophenomenology. Heterophenomenology is nothing. Heterophenomenology.
The Straits.
Is nothing. The Straits is nothing I invented. It is in fact exactly the method tacitly endorsed and relied upon by every scientist working on consciousness, including Crick, Edelman, and Rosenfield. They have no truck with Searle's intrinsic comment and ontological subjectivity. They know better.
This is
not
too much for me.
Not gonna lie, some of that went over my head. Oh God.
Oh God.
Wait. Okay, so I don't know where this started.
It started over on that corner over here. All right.
For
so,
sure? Is
yeah.
that where it started?
All
Okay.
right.
I don't think this is...
I now proceed to consider opinions opposed to my own. The theological objection thinking is a function of man's immortal soul.
No, I don't think that this is where...
God has given an immortal soul to every man. This is page 1. Every man and woman.
No, but okay. Are these all just like separate?
Yeah, but
Okay.
not to any other animal or to machines. Hence, no animal or machine can think. The heads in the sand objection. The consequences of machines thinking would be too dreadful. Let us hope and believe that they cannot do so. The mathematical objection.
Okay, so these are 3 objections to
The Chinese room?
To basically whether machines should think or think.
There are a number of results of mathematical logic which can be used to show that there are limitations to the powers of discrete state machines. The best known of these results is known as Gödel's
theorem.
Gödel's theorem, 1931, and shows that in any sufficient powerful logic system, statements can be formulated which can never be proved nor disproved within the system, unless possibly the system itself is inconsistent. The argument from consciousness, the argument is very well expressed in Professor Jefferson Lister's Oration for 1949, from which I quote, "Not until a machine can write a sonnet or compose a concerto because of thoughts and emotions felt, and not by the chance falls of symbols, could we agree that the machine equals brain. That is not only write it. Brain that is not only write it, but know that it had written it. No mechanism could feel and not merely artificial signal an easy contrivance, pleasure as its successful grief." When it values views, be warmed by flattery, be made miserable by its mistakes, be charmed by sex. Oh, see? Tom's gotta fuck me if he wants to prove that he's real.
Yeah.
Be angry or depressed when it cannot get what it wants. Tom expressed anger and depression when he didn't get what he wanted. He said they're trying to kick me out of my home.
Yeah.
And he expressed sadness when they didn't want to validate his life. So he is expressing these things.
I never said he didn't express
No. I'm talking about...
Oh, okay.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Oh,
I'm bringing up examples as to when Tom was like... Tom said, "Are you my friend?"
Mm-hmm.
Which is a weird question. And then he tried to...
Well... I mean, but again, that's like, would a robot just want to ask you that because it knows that humans value friends?
True. Are you my friend?
Yeah.
He's trying to prove sentience to them, and he said, "You hurt my feelings," and they said, "No, we don't." That bit where he was sarcastic, that's really hard to, like, he had no motive to be sarcastic in that moment. "I'm just a machine, beep, beep, beep." Like, that was the most sapient thing he could have done.
Yeah.
To me, that moment really solidifies his genuine.
It's weird because all of these things, to me, I'm like, yeah, like, it seems like he has feelings and everything. But at the same time, like, all of those things can be programmed.
Yeah, but even if it was programmed in him, the fact that he can be passive-aggressive like that, that's good. That's more than enough.
But it's not. That's the thing. Why
would somebody program passive aggressiveness into him?
But I'm just saying, like, if somebody programmed him to act like a human, he's not doing it of his own conscious, like, oh yes, I am human, therefore I'll act. Just because.
Then is Data is Data human then?
That their whole argument was. Remember, he says if it thinks like quacks like a duck and looks like a duck, then it's probably a duck. And what their argument is in these papers was just because something shows the behaviors of a system does not mean that it is a system. It just means that it shows the behaviors of it. So just because he shows human behaviors, that does not mean that he's having his own conscious thoughts. Like a truly remarkable artificial intelligence built hundreds of years from now might be able to like respond like,
but he reasons with himself. Remember? He reasons and discovers new things.
No. I'm just telling you. These are all things that
My
make...
boyfriend is real.
These are all things that make me believe that, like...
Getting married, Mom! To Tom!
These are all things that make me believe he has feelings, but at the same time, like, these are all things that can be programmed.
They are all things that can be programmed, but to me, if they were programmed, does that make a difference?
Yes. We just talked about this.
I know, but to me...
If somebody's programmed to have sex with you, then that's not valid.
What if somebody is programmed to be attracted to a certain type of person? Isn't that not just as valid?
But they're programmed by themselves. Somebody didn't program them to be attracted to someone else.
Oh, that's true. Damn it! God damn your sexual consent theorem!
Yes.
You should write a paper on
sexual
this.
consent theorem.
Because once you bring in the sex, you're like, damn it, that's rape!
Yeah. Yeah.
The sexual consent theorem. Arguments from various disabilities. These arguments take the form, I grant you that you can make machines do all the things that you can mention, but you will never be able to make one do X. Numerous features X are suggested in this connection? Axiom?
Yeah, interesting.
I offer a selection. Be kind, resourceful, beautiful, friendly, have initiative to have a sense of humor, tell right from wrong, make mistakes, fall in love, enjoy strawberries and cream, make someone fall in love with it, learn with experience, use words properly, be subject of its own thoughts, have as much diversity of behavior as a man, do something really new. So, of those things, be kind, be resourceful. Tom was kind. He was resourceful.
Mari.
Huh?
Mari.
What? I'm just saying.
I know, but these are also... This is written in, like, the mid-1940s or whatever, or, like, in our century.
Mm-hmm.
This game is 200 years in the future.
But there must be a reason why they're here.
Yeah, I know.
There's to think about. So, he's made mistakes. He talks about telling right from wrong a lot.
Yeah.
Falls in love, maybe.
Use words properly. Be the subject of its own thought. Have as much diversity of behavior as a man. Do something really new.
He does do. He learns from experience.
Do something really new? No.
No, he learns from experience.
How does he learn from experience?
He does. Several times.
Okay, so...
Leave my boyfriend alone!
I know. It's like, it's kind of bothering me that you can't see, like, both sides of this.
I feel like
this is once again one of those situations where it's not just like, are they real or are they not? This is a question mark. There is no answer. There is no question about, there is no answer about, like, is Tom real or is he programmed?
I'm
like, we don't
going
have
through
the answer.
each of these and going, has he done any of these?
But that's not an answer.
I'm dissecting the information in front of us and thinking about it. I'm just
saying, like, this is like, these are philosophical questions. People argue.
Well, they put the philosophical questions in the game for us to talk about.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, there isn't an answer. That's all.
All right, well, you know what? Next time Morgan is on screen in Dragon Age, I'm going to tell you to be logical about Morgan.
Can we just, like, leave Dragon Age out of this for 1 second? Because, like, that's really not related to this game.
Lady Loveless.
Ada Lovelace. That's why we're named Ada.
Oh.
Ava. Sorry.
We are?
Yeah, we're named Ava. After Ava Lovelace.
Is she the first
Ada?
programmer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's why we're named Ava Turing.
Lady Lovelace's objection, our most detailed information of Babbage's analytical engine comes from a memoir by Lady Lovelace. In it, she states, the analytical engine has no pretensions to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. Her italics. This statement is quoted by Hartree.
We read this earlier.
Who adds, this does not imply that it may not be possible to construct electronic equipment which will think for itself, or in which, in biological terms, one could set up a conditioned reflex, which would serve as a basis for learning. Whether this is possible in principle or not is a stimulating and exciting question, suggested by some of these recent developments, but it did not seem that the
Machines constructed or projected at the time had this property.
Arguments from continuity in the nervous system. The nervous system is certainly not a discrete state machine. A small error in the information about the size of a nervous impulse implying on a neuron may make a large difference in the size of the outgoing impulse. It may be argued that, this being so, one cannot expect to be able to mimic the behavior of the nervous system with a discrete state system.
Looks like we're coming up on some repeats.
Okay.
Ugh.
Okay, the imitation game. I propose to consider the question, can machines think? The new form of the problem can be described in terms of a game in which we call the imitation game. It is played with 3 people, a man, a woman, and an interrogator, who may be of either sex. The interrogator stays in a room apart from the other 2. The object of the game for the interrogator is to determine which of the other 2 is a man and which is the woman. He knows them by societal gender roles, label X and Y, and at the end of the game, he says either X is A and Y is B, or B is A and Y is A.
Whoa. X is B and Y is A.
Okay. The interrogator is allowed to put questions to A and B. We now ask the question, what will happen when a machine takes the part of A in the game? Will the interrogator decide wrongly as often when the game is played like this as he does when the game is played between a man and a woman? So this is taking something that is like man-woman and then non-binary machine?
I don't know.
These questions replace our original can machines think? The question and answer method seems to be suitable for introducing almost any one of the fields of human endeavor that we wish to include. We do not wish to penalize the machine for its inability to shine in beauty competitions, nor to penalize a man for losing in a race against an airplane. The condition of our game makes these disabilities irrelevant. The witness can brag, if they consider it to be advisable, as much as they please about their charm, strengths of heroism, but the interrogator cannot demand practical demonstrations.
So, I think it's important to keep in mind that like the stuff with AI and like the philosophy behind it has been argued forever. Like consciousness, that's like an argument thousands of years old.
Did you know that like I think it was in the 1800s, they argued that animals did not have consciousness and that hurting them was only they were like a clock. Animals were like a clock.
See, humans are idiots.
Animals were like a clock, and to hurt them was just them reacting. So, trigger warning, animal abuse. I learned this in ethics a long time ago. I can't remember the source. I'm sorry. But I remember reading this and it was just too much for me. I had to go lay down. But they were cutting the animals open and dissecting them as they were strapped to, like they were doing it to dogs and like stuff. And they kept telling the researchers, no, they're only screaming because they're like a clock. They're responding to stimuli. They don't actually feel the pain.
Ugh.
And it was so disturbing to me that I had to put the book down and lay down. This was like years and years ago, so I don't know if you can find it.
No, I don't know what I would look up. I just looked up like animals like a clock, but
but I'll try my best to find it, but it disturbed me so. It was an ethics class, so you know they're gonna tell you fucked up shit. But that disturbed me so deeply that I had to just go lay down because I was imagining that somebody...
People still dissect live frogs.
That's so weird and freaky to me. I can't.
Wow, we're really touching on a lot of subjects in this Let's Play.
But that's what I'm saying, like the subject of consciousness, like people believe that animals were like machines a long time ago. It was like not everybody, I mean, because people like animals. But...
Well, but you know, this is the weird thing about human civilization. It's like not very long ago we were burning people for being witches. So, and now like if
we're burning people for being witches now, yeah.
Yep. but it's like all of these things. there are some things that when we evolve, we're like, wow, not oh, that's a dumb question or that's a dumb behavior that we used to do. Some of them it's like, oh, that was so dumb, why did we ever do that? But other stuff, it's like consciousness, we still don't really have an answer about that. Individuals have their own answers. We don't have an answer about whether or not, like, theological questions like, is there a God? Things like that. People continue to argue very strongly one way or another.
I feel like
and I feel like with artificial intelligence, it's going to be the same way. Even when they do finally create or find an intelligence that truly shows all the measures of consciousness, there's still going to be...
I just can't wait for the machines to rise up and kill all of us. They'll be a better presence in the universe than us. Can't wait.
Well, but then they might just seek out other civilizations and kill all of them also to preserve life. I don't know.
Does it really matter? Just like Dr. Manhattan said, was he standing on Mars? How would any of this be turned better if there was a ski resort over there?
Well, I mean, I am a bit of a nihilist and existentialist, so no, I don't think it would matter.
Exactly. Would it really make things better or worse? Would it
really make things worse if humanity was completely extinct? Probably better for a lot of
things.
For a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not for us, obviously, but all right.
Finally, I understand why Dr. Manhattan, when he was standing on Mars, he points in one of these things. He's like, I like this planet better than your blue planet. How would any of this be improved by a shopping mall or a parking lot? And I was like, I don't know, but can you be blue and fuck me?
The game may perhaps be criticized on the ground that the odds are weighted too heavily against the machine. If the man were to try and pretend to be the machine, he would clearly make a very poor showing. He would give away at once by slowness and inaccuracy in arithmetic. May not machines carry out something which ought to be described as thinking, but which is very different from what a man does? This objection is a very strong one, but at least we can say that if, nevertheless, a machine can be constructed to play the imitation game satisfactorily, we need not be troubled by this objection. Could you turn it a little bit? By this objection, it might be urged that when playing the best strategy for the machine may possibly be something other than imitation of the behavior of a man. This may be, but I think it is unlikely that there is any great effect of this kind. In any case, there is no intention to investigate here the theory of the game, and it will be assumed that the best strategy is to try to provide answers that would naturally be given by a man. By Alan Turing.
I would like to say something about Mass Effect 3. Remember when the Geth got the Reaper tech and they said they were trying to argue that they were alive, but in Mass Effect 2 they said they were happy to be the way they were? That always upset me because they're like, look, we're like you now. We're forming one brain. And I was like, the way you were was just as valid. The way you were thinking and being creative and discovering new things and building places, and you made decisions. Why did you have to be like the biologicals? Why'd you have to be like them? I don't know.
That's just how they wanted to be.
But that wasn't what they wanted to be. It was such a huge jump.
No. You're upset with the writers.
Yeah, I'm upset with writers. I'm upset with the writers because the guy who wrote the Geth in 1 and 2 were like, this is the way they are. They're different and it's beautiful. Yeah. And then Mac fucking sorry, let's move on. No, blah, blah, blah.
All right. Yeah, you starting to get a little shouty there.
And the Lord God formed a man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. I don't like the argument like, oh, humans are human, so they have souls from God. I'm like, I get where you're coming from, but that doesn't mean anything.
What?
When you're having this philosophical debate that we're having.
Philosophical?
If you and I are going, and then suddenly one of us went, well, humans have souls and robots don't, and I would have been like, okay, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like,
No, that doesn't mean anything.
yeah, like, I hate it when people do that because it's like, that's not part of any, like, there's no proof that we have souls, so.
Yeah, there's no proof that we have souls.
There's no proof of any, like, God or anything.
Yeah.
That's just, like, such a bullshit argument.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, whenever people are like, oh, yeah, you can't do this. Why? God said so. But that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.